Out of nowhere, he just ran at my mom and grabbed her and started strangling her over a table in front of me. I just remember running over to try and help her, and he took me and flung me across the kitchen floor like I was nothing.
Tennessee ranks 7th overall in the United States for the number of women killed by men.
He was drinking and yelling, and then he would load the gun and unload it and point it at each of us. And it was scary.
In 2022, over 5,000 calls and text messages were received through the YWCA's Domestic Violence Crisis Line.
I have 2 little sisters, and he never touched them, but I was kind of his personal punching bag, and so was my mother, and I was maybe 5, 6 years old when it began.
I was just a kid, 3, 4, 5 years old, and my mother was being abused. It was an awful time looking back, growing up.
I was 9, 10 years old when we finally got away from it, and that's when we ended up at the Y.
In 2022, 407 clients were sheltered at the YWCA. 169 were children. My name is Sandy, and I have been with the YWCA for 3 years. Here at Weaver Domestic Violence Center, we are the first stop for survivors and families who are fleeing domestic violence. Often, this is a place where they find a fresh start and they start to rebuild their lives. Many days, children outnumber adults here in shelter. Children who are leaving abusive environments often normalize violence, which then leads to more violence. Here at Weaver, we want to challenge that narrative and create a new dialogue and let them know that violence is not normal. We want to empower our children to break the cycle of abuse.
I remember being scared. I remember being sad for my mom. She would be stoic. She would try not to cry, but she was being abused, and I had no idea what was going on. I thought it was normal. I felt like, drinking, yelling, screaming, abuse was just my life as a young kid, so I didn't know any different. I'm Barry Allen, and I'm a survivor of domestic violence.
Tell me what it was like growing up in your home.
A really dark time. I was the youngest of 3. My dad was a truck driver. He was an alcoholic, and he was abusive to my mom. My dad wasn't there a lot, but when he was drinking or sleeping. And a lot of times he would, ask us to leave the house, and we would come back, and, my mother would be sitting there, and she'd have a black eye, and my brother would be shaking, and my dad used to set us all around the table, and he would have his bottle of Crown Royal, and he would drink that, and then he would load the gun and unload the gun and point it at us and threaten to kill us and threaten to kill himself. And it was an awful time looking back, growing up. I didn't know any different, but it was a hard time in my life, and my mother was always trying to protect us.
How did you feel as a kid seeing what your mom went through?
I remember being scared. I remember being sad for my mom. I had trouble in school. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to leave my mom. But it was painful watching her go through what she went through. And my mother just was such a strong person, and she made everything as okay as she could make it. But emotionally, it was. I think today I'm probably still dealing with some of that emotion.
I was really young, maybe 5, 6 years old when it began, and it ended up affecting our life pretty heavy. It was terrible. It was things that I look back now and I've just completely blocked out. My name is Austin, and this shelter was a refuge for me, my mom, and my sisters. We came to the shelter when I was 10 years old. My earliest memories were full of physical abuse, mental abuse, alcoholic, adopted father. And that definitely put a big strain on the relationship with my mother. As the years kind of went by, he became way more volatile, way more abusive. Me and my mom, we became kind of like a personal punching bag to him. He was really drunk one night, and my mom had come home from work, and out of nowhere, he just ran at my mom and grabbed her and started strangling her over a table in front of me. And my sisters, they were already, they were kind of in the living room screaming, freaking out in this situation. I mean, imagine 2 infant children, one still can move around, walk, talk, and she's screaming for her mother not to die. and I went to jump in to try and interfere and, you know, try and do something as a 9-year-old can do anything. And he ends up taking me and throwing me across the into the kitchen floor, hitting the cabinet, and my mom finally just lost it and bit him, and she ended up jumping up and taking off. We got out the door, we got in the car as quick as we could and went to her friend's house, and then a couple days following that, he ended up actually finding that friend and slashing the tires on that friend's minivan. And they were afraid, you know, they didn't want any part of that. They were just like, you know, we want to help you, but this just isn't the way, it's interfering with us. And that's what brought us to the Y. That's what got us here.
Imagine having to uproot your entire life, leave friends behind, leave precious belongings behind in order to be safe. There are so many layers that come into play when children come into shelter. There are often feelings of resentment, of anger. I would say it's a lot to ask of a child.
I remember us getting there, my sisters by my side, you know, they're crying. They don't know what's going on. They just got brought into this building. So I remember they opened these closets. They had these really nice blankets for us. They had these teddy bears and this stuff. And knowing that they present you with something warm was huge, you know, because that's the first thing you want as a kid, is something you can hold on to, because your mom, she's shaking. The staff were really quick to open arms. They were hugging my mom, they were hugging us, you know, is there anything we can do for you? Here, you know, they were quick, are you guys tired? You know, are you hungry? They were very quick about that. They showed us to our room.
Do you remember the room you were in?
Yeah, it was pretty small. It was this one coming up actually. I just remember it was a really tiny room. You know, it had one bed, and you gotta think there's me, my mother, and my 2 sisters, you know.
So you were saying that you shared a bed with your family?
Yep, we shared a bed. I think it was a full size, and it was set in the corner. 3 kids and 1 woman shared a bed, just that size.
The YW offers such a safe place, you know, not only for the women, but for their children. A place that they won't get hurt, they won't get harmed, that they can save their life. They can come to the shelter and learn a new normalcy where their mom's not going to be abused, they're not going to be hurt.
Knowing that I'm not going to get beat again, that was a big thing. You know, knowing that there was people watching, knowing that my mom wasn't going to get hurt anymore, that was huge for me. The biggest thing that changed was definitely security. We knew, like, no one was getting past that gate, and no one knew where we were, so that was big.
Here at Weaver, we want to make sure that children feel supported. Often they come in confused, being in a new environment where they don't know anybody, they're living with strangers. We want to make sure that they are provided with the resources that they need, whether it's therapy or creating activities where they can be children and they can process everything that is happening. We want to create a safe place where they can receive a positive experience.
It definitely got easier as time went on, just because it was, you know, you were uprooted, you were changing everything. There was a lot of younger kids than me, so I didn't really have that connection with the younger kids. You know, I was already in my own headspace about everything that was happening, but they did have something here that was kind of huge for me at the time. They introduced like a computer lab, and that was huge. Like that kept my mind away from a lot of other things, and that helped out a lot. That and the staff was just anything you needed, they wanted to be there to help you. This place made it to where we knew that we could have a future outside of where we were at. You know, that we didn't have to be treated the way we were treated. It wasn't just a physical change, it was a complete mindset change.
Tell me how you got involved with working with the YWCA and advocating for survivors of abuse.
A year or so ago, we sold our business. And as we were developing our mission and vision for how we want to be philanthropic, our mission, we decided, was to help women and children and families that were kind of under-resourced and underserved. And it just made sense that the YW would be something we'd want to be interested in. And I wanted to do something for my mom. I wanted to do something for her legacy. The YW has a playground that they needed at the local shelter, and we've agreed to support that and build that structure, that playground, and name it after my mom, Nanny's Playhouse. And we're really, really excited about that.
At the YW, our goal is to make their shelter experience a memorable one. And we want it to be a positive experience in the midst of all of their difficulties and all of the hardships that children see that we might not understand. And that starts with mom making the decision to break the cycle of violence, and that's how lives are saved.
Had we not come here, he probably would have killed her, you know, and if her, then maybe us. You know, you don't know in this situation. We didn't become another statistic. she finally, realized in her head, this isn't healthy. I need to get away from this. And I think the rationalization of having places like this for women to know that that's not okay and that you can go somewhere is a life changer in itself. I can only imagine how she felt as an adult, like how difficult that had to have been for her. And then uprooting everything, job, everything changing to come here. And she didn't even know what tomorrow was gonna hold. So I really don't know how she did it. I don't.
My wife oftentimes tells me that our 4 boys are really good daddies, and to watch them with their wives and how they help give baths and how they help change diapers and how they feed their children. My dad never was like that, and I was able evidently to break that cycle with our children. When I think about my mom and what she went through, and knowing she did it all on her own, and we're able to go tell her story, and it can save one person's life. That's be wonderful for my legacy, but for my mother, who's no longer here, it will have her name and her legacy going on forever. And to think that my kids and their kids could come to a home 20 years from now and see the difference that my mom is making, and she's not here, will be what I want my legacy to be, and hers.